Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jerron Haefner, Chancellor here at the University of Denver, and it's my distinct pleasure to welcome you to a webinar on performance goals and the University of Denver's 5 strategic imperatives. I'm joined today with two wonderful colleagues, Provost Mary Clark and Interim Vice Chancellor for Human Relations, Jerron Lowe. And we're here to just engage all of you in a discussion on the performance goals that we're now rolling out. It's an exciting new technology platform that HR has been working on. And then to reacquaint you with the 5 strategic imperatives. As you may recall, the 5 imperatives were introduced in September of 2019. With the expectation that there would be a lot of follow-up and further discussions. Unfortunately, there was a little pandemic that got in the way and distracted us from doing that. But now we feel this is a good time for us to reintroduce the notion of the 5 strategic imperatives. So we'll be talking about that. Here's how the webinar will flow. Mary and I are going to give a relatively short slideshow on the 5 imperatives, kind of giving the rationale, the context, and really going into detail of what they mean. And hopefully you'll see where you fit into the 5 imperatives, because they're intended for everyone to see a place where they can participate and contribute. And then we'll turn it over to Jerron Lowe, who will talk more about the performance goals and the platform itself. And then we'll have time for Q&A as well. And of course, the Q&A box is open, and we encourage you to participate in that way. So again, I want to thank you for joining us. And with that, I am going to share my screen. So here we go. And hopefully you can see that, and I'll start from the very top as well. All right, so 5 strategic imperatives really starts with the notion of the background, why we wanted to look at those 5 imperatives. And I bet that you have seen this context in one form or another, but changes on the left and some challenges as well, and then the opportunities on the right. So what are some of those? Well, we know, for example, that there is a substantial enrollment cliff coming at us in 2025 due to the decreased number of births that have been ongoing for the last decade or more. So there'll be fewer high school graduates in 2025. We're already kind of seeing some pressures around that. And competition will increase tremendously for those students. We know that we have a high cost of tuition as a private university. We know that we need to differentiate ourselves and really think carefully about the value proposition. And of course, COVID has accelerated so much of the changes that we see in this landscape out there. So we're particularly interested in accelerating the transformation of this university. And of course, now there's lots of discussion on free college. And what would that mean for private universities, particularly private undergraduate education? But the University of Denver is in a great place as well. There's so many wonderful opportunities, so many strengths that it brings to the table. First and foremost is our vision dedicated to the public good, and how much it's actuated throughout the work that we do, whether it's the community engagements that we have or the great graduates that we're producing, but it's a real manifestation of our vision. We're sitting inside a very exciting city, Denver. It's stimulating. People are drawn here. Faculty are recruited here because of the city to live in. It's a very pleasant place. Students come here because they want to be engaged in the city. We also have the Rocky Mountains behind us, and the wonderful opportunity to fully take advantage of the outdoors and immersion in that regard. I think our mix of undergraduates and graduate is another strength that we bring to the table. And I think there's opportunities for us to take advantage of all of these strengths in a more deliberate and intentional way. So that's the context that we have. Some big challenges, also some big opportunities. Why should we care about this? Well, over the years, there are some metrics that we watch very carefully. And frankly, I think we want to be very cognizant of the fact that they're headed in different directions than where we really want them to go. And this is not just unique to the University of Denver. This is true for many universities. So for example, the yield rate, which is the percentage of students that actually matriculate to the University of Denver divided by the number of students we admit. And that's been going down. And so is this a concern for us? We've already mentioned the high cost of attendance at the University of Denver. Is there enough value for that high cost? And how can we make DU more affordable, especially for those with less means to attend? We also know that those families that can mostly pay the tuition of the University of Denver, there's fewer of them coming to the University of Denver. What does this mean? And how do they play a role in helping to support those that have less means at the University of Denver? Our rankings, we made a very substantial improvement in the rankings this past year, and we're very proud of that. But is that good enough right now? And is our brand strong enough in order to really position us well in the future? Now, change is in the air. Can a university change? We know that there are a lot of examples of universities changing over the last decades and so forth. New York University, Northeastern University, and Boston University are some of the examples over the years have made dramatic changes and really improved in the position in the marketplace out there, really become stronger with research and with the student support. Let me show you a few slides that kind of dramatically show how at least Northeastern has made this dramatic change within the last 10 to 15 years. So on this slide, you see two metrics. One is the acceptance rate and one is the yield rate. I've already talked about the yield rate, but the acceptance rate, of course, is the number of students admitted divided by the total number of applications. And the red graph represents Northeastern. And of course, the more selective school means a lower percentage for the acceptance rate. You can see the dramatic change that Northeastern has done over the last 15 years, coming down from about 45% all the way down to 20%. The acceptance rate at the University of Denver has kind of come down as well, but not nearly as dramatically. And this is a reflection of selectivity, which of course is part of the brand of the University of Denver. The yield rate, as I mentioned earlier, one that has been in a declining direction for the University of Denver, and you can kind of see the dramatic change there. Again, Northeastern, much different story, kind of stabilizing right there in the low 20s. So for those reasons, you can see the difference in these two institutions. Here's another set of metrics here. On the left, you have the percentage of undergraduates identified as people of color, again for Northeastern in red and the University of Denver in gold. And on the right, the rankings. What I find really interesting of this is Northeastern's got a sharper, steeper curve to the increase of people of color. And I find that, of course, very dramatic in terms of preparing that university for the demographic shift that we're experiencing today. University of Denver also making substantial improvements, but not quite at the same rate. Now, interestingly enough, you might think the endowments are a different picture. We actually have a larger endowment per student than Northeastern does. On the right, you've got the rankings, And there you see the dramatic change that the Northeastern has done. And we've stayed in the 80s, 90s, sort of, for the most part as well. Now, there's two more slides here that I'm going to turn over to my colleague, Mary Clark, who will talk about retention rate and graduation rate, and then go into detail about the University of Denver. Mary?
Thank you, Jeremy, and I'm pleased to be with you all this afternoon. My office has been doing substantial work around persistence of students from the first year to the second year, which is the slide you see on the left, and then also looking at graduation rates. We track both the 4-year and the 6-year. And I want to take this opportunity to shout out to Jennifer Karras and Sarah Hoffman in my office, who do significant work in this area. I am the beneficiary of all they do. You'll see in terms of the first year retention rate, again, it's the students who return for their fall of their sophomore year. Northeastern in the red is currently at 96.8. Last year was at 99.3. So very few of its students are leaving after the first year. By contrast, here at DU, we had been relatively static around 87%. And then we've dropped in the last 2 years, first to 85%, then more recently to 84.1. That may well be a COVID effect, and you can see a similar drop at Northeastern. But this indicates to me that 16% of our first year students are leaving before they return for their second year. And why is that? Students come to DU because they intend to graduate from DU, and I'm concerned that we may not be adequately supporting them or helping them realize their goals. And on the right, the 6-year graduation rate also shows a significant differential between Northeastern and DU. You'll see on the gold bar that DU is losing approximately 1/4 of its students before they graduate. Again, they come here because they want to be here, they want to graduate from here, and then move on to successful lives of purpose after graduation. Would love to see us serve them better. Thank you, Jeremy. This just reflects the DU specific data, the static around 87%, and then the drop to 85, 84. The gold bar is a comparison with our peers. And if we advance one slide, you'll see that last year, the DU Board of Trustees, together with the institutional research, identified a market basket of approximately 25 peer universities that are like ourselves. Jeremy, if you'll advance one, you'll see these are more urban-based, student-centered research universities, and their retention rates, first to second year persistence, average 91%. We find ourselves second from the bottom in that regard. So I'd love to draw your attention to this and to invite us all to be thinking about how we can best support our students, again, to realize their goals and ambitions. What follows is a distribution of persistence by student demographic. The bar in crimson is the average. All the other gold bars are by individual demographic. I'll draw your attention to the 4th bar, which is Black or African American students. They are being retained by the university at almost 5 percentage points below the average. Likewise, next to Black or African American students is the Hispanic or Latina students. They're slightly below the average persistence rate, but closer. So I'd invite you to take a look at this data. What follows next is just a quick snapshot of our graduation rates. You'll see they have hovered in the area of 75% at DU for the last several years. That compares unfavorably, again, with these peers who are operating at about an 82% 6-year graduation rate. And then again, the next slide will show that more graphically. The same market basket of urban-based, student-centered research universities. Here we're 1/3 from the bottom, but I would invite us all to be thinking about ways that we can support our students better and see them through to the finish line. Last slide for me for now does show the distribution by demographic group. in terms of both the 4-year and the 6-year graduation rates, 4-year in crimson, 6-year in gold. We see, I can draw your attention again to Black or African American students for far in, that at 6 years, those students are outperforming the average 6-year graduation rate, which is good news. What I would love to see is that all of our students, or many more of our students, are graduating in 4 years, because 6 years means, more likely than not, that they are accumulating more financial aid debt for their time here at DU, and we would like to minimize that. So back to you, Jeremy.
Great, thank you, Mary. So those graphs that you saw were intended to at least give you a little glimpse of at least one university that made substantial changes. But there are other examples, as I mentioned, New York University, Boston University as well. And we didn't just pick them for the rankings, because we picked them also for some key student success metrics, like retention and graduation rates as well. So should DU change? I think there is lots of evidence to indicate it definitely should change. And the DU Impact 2025 is really all about change. It was a visionary strategic plan that you all put together to really transform this university, to prepare it for that rapidly changing landscape that we knew was coming in 2025 and is now really on us today. And of course, we aspire for excellence. The public good is so much intertwined in our DNA, and we know that change is possible as well out there. So thinking about our vision and mission really as the foundations for how we move forward, right? Again, that public good is so entwined in who we are as a university, but our mission to deliver educational experiences to our students and advance knowledge through the research and scholarly work that our faculty are doing are integral to the very essence of the University of Denver. How do we build on this? How do we realize our vision? Well, that DU Impact 2025 was very visionary, is very visionary. And of course, what we need to do now, given the time that we have left to really transform this university, is bring a laser focus to the transformation that we need. And that's the intent behind the 5 strategic imperatives, to help us really address those areas where we need to make these changes rapidly here. Are all 5 imperatives meant to differentiate the university? No, not entirely, because some of them are intended just to bring us up to the level that we need to be up in order to compete in this world. But there are some that will differentiate us. So what we're going to do now is quickly go through them, giving you some examples of what kind of activities fall within each of the 5 imperatives. And there they all are. A bold future for DU, a holistic 4-dimensional student experience, diversity, equity, and inclusion, a research university, engaged, and finally, academic excellence through a modern portfolio of programs. So I'm going to start with the very first one, which is this bold future for the University of Denver. And what does it mean exactly? Well, it means things that I think are applicable to all of us, right? We really know that in order to be successful, to have that bold future, we need to make sure that there is a level of satisfaction and a level of engagement of our employees and our students. And I think there's work that we need and can and should do in that space. Talent is critical to the future of this university. Enrollments, a successful campaign, marketing, branding, but really the student success that Mary just described is kind of central to this bold and important future for the University of Denver. So how do we know when we're successful with this? Well, I think improved retention and graduation rates are going to be a key indicator for us. That we're better at meeting the need, the financial need of our students, that the yield rate will increase, that we've had a successful campaign, that there is more recognition, and yes, better rankings and continued rankings, not because we're making that our strategy, but rather we're just smarter about how we're going about that. The South Campus development, because there's areas where we need to increase and improve the facilities that we have. And improved employee satisfaction is critical to that. So those are really imperative number one. Imperative number two is this unique 4D student experience. And while you may have heard some about this, we owe you a lot more information about where that is really headed. And there's been work on this. In fact, we're piloting it with 142 first-year students. And I'm very grateful to the first-year seminars faculty that have taught in these particular sections. And I know it's been impactful for our students already. So we have launched a pilot and we'll continue to expand and scale this up for the entire student body. You know, those 3 new buildings that we just opened up, the Des Moines Family Residential Village, the Burwell Center for Career Achievement, and the Community Commons are all wonderful examples of reinventing the student experience. But the intent through DU Impact 2025 was to introduce programming that would really get at the kinds of changes that we want to see in the student experience. And the 4D is intended to do that. The 2 dimensions where there's a lot of work that needs to be done is under the exploration of character and the promotion of well-being. And you're seeing some of that work being kind of hashed out now. There will be some announcements coming soon about a structure that will help us scale it up and take it to the entire student body shortly as well. So what does success mean for imperative number 2? Well, increased student engagement and satisfaction, just like we said was so important. Really a recognition that the University of Denver becomes known in a unique way for its whole student development. And I think a recognition by prospective parents and students that there's an enhanced value proposition that the university is delivering on and making promises on. So that's imperative number 2, the unique 4-dimensional student experience. Let's turn to the other one, and I'm going to ask my colleague Mary to jump in here on imperative number 3.
I'm glad to, thank you. And when I think of imperative 3, I really think of all of our community. At base, what I would like to ensure is that all members of our community feel valued and celebrated and embraced here at DU, whether we're thinking of students, staff, or faculty, that all individuals come to one another with a sense of respect and appreciation and understanding and an interest in learning about the other's experience. So at base, that's what this imperative means to me, and it's the mandate that I've set for myself. What does it include? It includes implementation of the DEI action plan that Tom Romero and Nikki Latino and Jerron Lowe, who's on the screen here, all developed last summer and have begun implementing in very serious ways already. Sand Creek Memorial, Native American Studies Center that we've been in conversation about, Gender Violence Action Plan, a culture of respect here at DU as it relates to interactions among our students and the community more broadly. You see the recent appointment, I guess it was announced last Thursday, of our new VC Vice Chancellor for DEI, Christopher Witt, coming from Creighton University. Any number of measures that we're taking now really, again, in the direction of having a community where all individuals feel a sense of belonging and value and respect and are celebrated for the work they do and the perspectives and backgrounds they bring to our community. So what makes for success? It would be that sense of belonging, a culture of equity, our action plans being realized, the new Vice Chancellor being hired and onboarded. And then Tom Romero has been thinking very thoughtfully about DEI action plans and staff or faculty support in each of the units to further those plans. And that work is already well underway. The next imperative relates to our research. We are an engaged research university with great ambition to be even more so. Here I'd like to salute the excellent work of Corrine Lengsfeld as interim provost and as senior vice provost for research and graduate education. Corrine really has masterminded our rise as a research university. The percent of faculty who are engaged as principal investigators on grants has increased, I believe, from 1/5 to 1/3, and it's on its way to 1/2 of our faculty, so very significant in that regard. Our research expenditures, which are a major metric of how a research university is defined, have been growing. Had some challenges during COVID because we can't spend all the research dollars that we've earned through major federal grants, but our faculty are ambitious and have a great appetite for the research, some of which you have already seen, the saliva testing that we've engaged in, the wastewater monitoring that we've engaged in during COVID. So any number of enterprises there. A couple other things I'd like to highlight in terms of signature research areas that are being developed by deans and faculty together relate to health and mental health, sustainability, here understood as the environment, democracy and civil discourse, entrepreneurship, and then of course, diversity, equity, and inclusion, where we have strengths in many of our schools and colleges across the university. So I think if we move forward one in terms of how we would measure success, really is in the recognition of our scholarly work, our creative work, our professional work. We are looking to be recognized for very high research. That is a Carnegie classification known as R1. It is not something we are pursuing unto itself, but rather as a reflection of our commitment to the scholar-teacher ideal. So as many deans have put it, it's R1 our way. That's our goal. And then I've highlighted those 5 areas that we're particularly seeking interdisciplinary fundraising for, working closely with our Chief Advancement Officer, Val Otten. Last strategic imperative has to do with excellence with academic programs. Here we have undergone this year a very thoroughgoing review of all 170 academic programs. Again, hat tip to Corrine Lengsfeld, as well as Jennifer Karras and Linda Costin in my office, working with many faculty and deans across campus to undertake this review. We've now shared this information with the deans who are in turn sharing it with folks in their units as to how to make sense of this data and how best to act upon it. We also have developed this year a number of new programs, or they're currently in development. You'll see called out health. We have a new program in physiology. We're looking also at other programs within STEM, kinesiology. We're looking at sports studies. There is a program making its way through cause that brings together music, the arts, design, and technology in just a fascinating combination of modalities and ideas. And then, of course, in terms of online ed, we all this year have engaged in online ed. Moving forward, what we'd love to do is to build out further our internal capacity to provide first-rate online education and to lessen our reliance on third-party providers. So again, how would we measure success? If we turn to the next slide, you'll see excellence is our brand. It is already, but would love for us to double down on that. Attracting first-rate faculty, again, we are already, and we're in a favorable position this year to be very active in the faculty appointment market. We've attracted some outstanding faculty already this year. New programs that respond to the interests of our current students, again, mindful of this enrollment cliff that's predicted just a number of years ahead of us. International enrollments, I work very closely with Utio Radshuri in my office on expanding both undergrad and grad students when it comes to international national enrollments, and then the culture of innovation. Jeremy mentioned earlier, developing our South Campus that really is in the direction of a culture of innovation. So thank you. And Jeremy, back to you.
Thank you, Mary. Well, those are the 5 strategic imperatives. I hope that you see a role that you are playing in at least one of them. And I can tell you that everyone is playing a role in the strategic imperative number 1, that bold future of the University of Denver, because we're all working to make sure that it has a stable future and a ground and really in a strong position in the marketplace. Your work to help support students, to help support your colleagues, have that sense of belonging is critical. And I think everyone plays a role in our diversity, equity, and inclusion aspirations, just to name a couple of those. Well, what I'm going to do now is stop sharing my screen so that Jerron Lowe may have an opportunity to show his screen. And I'm going to stop it. There we go. And take us through the performance goals and the new platform. Jerron?
Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining today and learning about how we can continue to support the mission and vision and the strategic direction of the university. My portion today will be around, for this town hall, is to discuss how do we support and provide the scaffolding to continue with this alignment with our strategic imperatives. So I'm going to cover a few things quickly. So first, what is goal alignment with the strategic imperatives? Why is it important and why now? Our opportunities around robust reporting that's available as we change our alignment and our goal planning and performance planning moving forward. And then share what our ask of everyone is moving forward. What's new with the capabilities of our performance management system. And then in addition, what resources exist to help each and everyone walk through the new system, alignment, and entering goals moving forward. And then lastly, we'll move it to panel discussion with my colleagues on the screen. So first, the mission, vision, values. What is goal alignment and why is it important? So this gives us the opportunity for leaders to report on all of the great work and current work that we're doing and aligning that to our mission, vision, and our strategic imperatives that were just shared. The leaders are able to now input their divisional goals or strategic initiatives into the system, into Cornerstone. And when they input each or submit each goal or initiative, there is a drop-down menu that's hardwired to show the 5 strategic imperatives, which gives an opportunity for the division leaders to enter their goal and select specifically how that goal aligns to which specific strategic imperative or multiple strategic imperatives. And then there's opportunity for the leaders to either cascade the goals all the way through their division to the frontline staff member, or make their goals visible. And then there's direct reports have the opportunity to see their leaders' goals and then align their individual goals to those leaders' goals. So as you see, there is a true line of sight opportunity to cascade from the strategic imperatives all the way to the front line. So the employee engagement survey, we launched this in March of we launched this in fall of 2018, our very first employee engagement survey. And this was the purpose was around our commitment about advancing DU and supporting a 1DU, being an exemplary employer and increasing the engagement of our community or gauging our engagement of the community. There was one particular statement, it's statement number 5. And this statement, as Modern Think shared with us, this is one of the biggest key indicators of our community's level of engagement, how to monitor engagement. The statement states, "I understand how my job contributes to this institution's mission." As you see, it says for overall, University of Denver had an 86 positive response rate. And what's more impressive, that there was a 4% negative response rate here. Now, this is in comparison to the 2018 honor roll schools, our peer institutions, and the 2018 Carnegie Research institutions. As you see, they're 92% positive and 88% positive, respectively. The reason why I bring this up is that it's important to show what was our last baseline metric around our community's engagement and how they see the work that they contribute to the mission. How aligned are we? Considering that we're now socializing in more depth the 5 strategic imperatives and how we're shifting and revising as we move forward, it's really important that we continue to focus on this number and make sure that we're bringing along and strengthening the level of engagement as we revise or change course moving forward. So why is it important and why now? As I stated early on, we want to make sure that we're capturing the work, not only that our leaders, divisions, and each frontline staff member is already doing, but we also want to centralize and be able to see the impact that each of us are having on each strategic imperative. I'm going to get into a bit more around the robust reporting, but that's a key element and allows us to be a lot more sophisticated in our performance and overall university effectiveness. In addition, this focuses on the development and the contribution of our employees. A critical component of performance planning is developing and establishing that relationship between manager and employee. And we have a new learning management system that we launched early on last year that allows a lot of content for development there. And then lastly, this provides some opportunity on how we want to set our goals and our tracking of our completion rates, the feedback around that, and also you can set your milestones for review to set a more consistent, frequent review with direct reports. So reporting, as I mentioned, this gives us an opportunity with the system tracking how each goal is aligned to the strategic imperatives or how each goal is aligned to an employee's, a staff member's manager, direct manager and above. We're able to go in and pull reporting on the number of goals that we have dedicated to each strategic imperative. We're also able to see the percentage of goals that are dedicated per strategic imperative. And we can see the completion rates by those imperatives as well. And this can go and we can drill all the way down to individuals and what they're working on. This is important because as this is our first go-to, this is going to be the opportunity for us to get a baseline of the reporting and see, like I said, the work that's captured and how it aligns to the imperatives or not, and to see how are we dedicating our resources and time to the 5. So our ask is basically, first, we will be launching the performance management, performance planning system to the divisional leaders first. This gives the leaders the opportunity to enter in their divisional goals or strategic initiatives and align them to the 5 strategic imperatives, one or multiple, and there's even a box for non-applicable, as we know that maybe not every goal may align to the strategic imperatives, so we're able to track that as well. And then there's the opportunity for leaders, and with this town hall, as there's a lot of direct individual contributors as well, to understand what goal alignment means for your respective division, why it's important, and what's going to be expected of all of us when we go in to enter in our individual goals moving forward. So I don't want anyone to panic. I know it's a new system. It's a change in behavior that we're asking folks to do. But what we do have resources that are here to help you. So please rest assured, we've put together user guides with screenshot instructions on navigating through the system. There'll be communication supports that will be coming from Marcom and HRIC. There's direct consulting from the HR Partners Group in assistance with Mia Elizardi in People Development, myself, and your HR partners. Town halls, as you see, we're doing that now. And there's the opportunity for custom training, or as we call side-by-side, or Zoom side-by-side for now, to walk you through the system, organize and categorize your goals so that you can, so that they can be inputted in such a way that makes the most sense for your division and strategic imperatives or strategic initiatives for your group. So with that, I will say thank you and stop sharing and go ahead and open this up for the panel discussion.
Actually, I think there's been a large number of questions, which I find very gratifying. And we're going to try to get to some of the big topic ones in the remaining 15 minutes here. So Jerron and Mary, I've got a few of them, and I thought I'd just kind of throw them out for all of us to add to them. Mary?
Oh, and I'm quick to add that faculty will still be reporting and having the reviews through Activity Insight. I just want to provide that clarification at the outset for those of you who are wondering. Faculty administrators will participate in the goal setting that Jerron just articulated, but our faculty writ large will be using Activity Insight. So just wanted to clarify that point.
That's very important clarification. Thank you, Mary. There were a number of questions on the slides that showed Northeastern and its improvements on various different metrics. And the intent to show Northeastern wasn't to necessarily compare the University of Denver to Northeastern, although we had the two graphs on the same axis system there. Really, it was intended to show the possibility of an institution transforming itself. And you saw that in so many different metrics for Northeastern, not just in rankings, but in key student success metrics as well. There's some questions as well about how much does it cost to go there? Is it a comparable institution? In fact, IPED's data shows that last year the tuition was $53,000, which is very close to what the University of Denver is right now. So they're very comparable in terms of total cost of attending. Obviously, it's in a different geographic location. It has a different mission and vision than the University of Denver. And we don't want to be like Northeastern. We want to be like the University of Denver. But I think what it inspires us is to really think, how can a university really make this giant change? So another question, and it kind of builds off of that, is there was really good information that Mary shared about retention and graduation. There's a question about what do you believe are the primary drivers for our performance in these areas? Mary, you want to take a whack at that?
I'm glad to. And I also want to clarify the data we shared is undergraduate retention rates and not graduate. So I saw that question in the chat as well. We are working to develop a PowerPoint around our graduate students' experiences as well. So coming to a venue near you. In terms of undergrads, there are two primary reasons why I understand they are leaving DU before they graduate. And one has to do with financial need, as well as a perception of the value of the DU education. So Jeremy just highlighted our tuition a sticker. And for some students, they're seeking to make sense of that cost of attendance as compared with opportunities they might have and as compared with opportunities they might have specifically at public flagships. So financial need is something we need to address. Also, the perception of value, the return on investment. So that's one. Second has to do with campus climate and the sense of belonging. We see goodly numbers of students, students of color, as well as white students expressing a lack of full sense of belonging, that they haven't yet met their best friends or their peer group or their social circle here at DU. And I believe that faculty and staff, as well as fellow students, can meaningfully help to address that sense of belonging. The culture work that we spoke of earlier related to DEI is a significant part of that effort, is what I'd say.
Terrific. And Mary, another question just related to retention rates. Do we see significant differences depending on the colleges themselves?
We see some. So when you're looking at persistence, which is the first to second year figure, we do see, for example, that the Daniels College of Business is more strongly retaining its students than some of the other units on campus. So Daniels most recently was operating in the 90 to 91st% in terms of first to second year persistence. What are our hypotheses? They're twofold. There's a real brand identity, if you will, around attendance in the Daniels College of Business. Likewise, there is a joint staff and faculty advising model in Daniels. It's true of a couple other units as well, and that does seem to be particularly effective. So we're looking at that model.
Terrific. So I've got another question. This one's more for Jerron, but Mary and Jerron, I invite you to look at the Q&A as well. And if there's an interesting question that you want to tackle, we'll get to that as well. Jerron, this one is really on how does HRIC plan to reconcile these strategic imperatives and employee evaluation with the uncertainty around whether there will be merit this year? You want to address that one?
Absolutely. I think there's a couple ways to look at it. The first is what I stated in the beginning around we're already engaged in doing the work. We're into the cycle, and we've already started, our divisional plans and strategies. This gives the opportunity to just capture the work that's being done, that we're continuing to do. Yes, there with the concern around if merit's available, that's a second component of performance planning and how this impacts us as individuals in terms of our total compensation packages. But another piece of doing the work that we do is for overall university performance and us to improve our performance and step our game up each year moving forward. Right now, with the reporting that we're going to be able to do in the system with this goal alignment, this gives just the initial data set that we can build upon in later years and cycles to see, how are we improving and where do we need to maybe refocus our resources or energy put forth around the goal alignments. We'll get more sophisticated there, but it's twofold. Yes, there may be an impact around the total rewards and compensation as individuals, but we also want to make sure that we're capturing the great work for the university effectiveness moving forward.
Terrific. Jerron, I think this one is so closely related, I thought I'd put it out there as well. Is there a method within the platform to assign to measures and metrics to corresponding goals, either crafted by the division or pre-populated? And is there a plan to raise the competency of the entire campus to better assess progression towards these goals?
Can you read the first part of that one again?
Yeah, sure. Is there a method within the platform that allows you to assign to metrics and measures and to the corresponding goals, either crafted by the division or the pre-populated or are pre-populated? So it goes to how are we going to assess ourselves and the progress towards our goals? I think that's the gist of it.
Yeah, that's a beautiful question, and will come along with our evolution moving forward. So yes, they're depending on how well the goals are written, and we really want to emphasize SMART goals and that are outcome based. And I think where the question is leaning towards is if I'm wanting to create an outcome based goal that has upon metrics or improving a certain metric or data point, yes, you can state that in the system on what it will impact this metric by X% or what have you. You can put that in there. Now, as far as our reporting and how we're tracking and assessing the goals and the completion rates and the progress, I think as we move along, as I said, this is a baseline year to get the information. As we progress and evolve, we will be developing the university, all of everyone who's inputting goals and how we use these goals and become more sophisticated from an analytics standpoint around the university effectiveness piece. So yes, this is ongoing. It's going to be progressive. It's going to evolve, and we will increase the capabilities and competencies there.
Great, thank you. Mary.
I had a series of questions I'd love to address real quick. Like someone asked about the Denver Advantage buildings and whether they might help further students' sense of belonging. And thank you for the question. I think very much so. That was their intent. And I think that is the reality that they've already realized, at least in part. You go to the community commons and it's just a pleasure to see students gathering together for meals and in all the different office and lounge spaces that exist there. Likewise, DeMond and Burwell, I think when we're more fully in force on campus, I think that will likewise be a source of belongingness for students. So thank you for that question. I was also asked whether financial aid packages grow over time while students are enrolled at DU, and the answer is yes. But the percentage by which the financial aid package grows may not fully track the percentage by which tuition increases. I know Jeremy and I and many others are committed to closing those gaps and to ensuring that third and fourth year students in particular are not leaving DU for reasons of unmet need. We wish to address that gap. And then the third question that was asked was whether our programs are annually reviewed, academic programs. And the answer is this task force that Corrine led that did a very thoroughgoing review of academic programs has developed a dashboard that can be regularly updated that will allow for that annual review. So thank you for that question as well.
And I've got one here. It says, so what information is there about why students are either leaving DU or not graduating from DU? I think Mary has done a very thorough, and her team has done a really good job at researching that. But the question goes on, it says, also, to what extent would becoming a more selective institution help meet our challenges? And in what ways is becoming more selective in conflict with the challenges we face as well as the imperatives set out for us? That's a great question. So while selectivity isn't the only metric that we would certainly look at, but one way to think about selectivity is happy choices for the student body that we create. And in a time when we know that increasingly the demographics are showing that there will be more and more minorities of minoritized students that'll be available to graduate from high school. Those happy choices by having more applications and being able to control the admit list will allow us to really make sure that we're hitting the benchmarks that we need to hit for a diverse student body. So that's one example of where selectivity can help us. Selectivity also helps us, of course, in the reputation of the institution. It is a factor of the ranking systems that are out there. It's not, of course, a perfect way, but it is one of those metrics that the ranking systems use. So in that sense, it increases the recognition of the university and the brand of the university as well. Again, trying to attract more students to attend the University of Denver. In what ways is becoming in conflict? Well, one might argue that by being more selective in our processes, we're excluding more students. And in a certain sense, you could say that, but I think it's also really making sure that the students that we do admit here, and we live up to our obligation of ensuring that they graduate, and their success is part of that piece of that. Mary, or would you like to add anything else to that interesting question?
I think that was quite spot on in terms of what our goals and aspirations are for our students and for their success here at DU. So thank you.
Very good. Jerron, last question here, and then I think we'll pull it to a close because we're almost out of time. Will these staff performance management metrics influence salary and merit increases?
Well, the way our performance management and compensation philosophy are aligned, the overall answer is yes, it could impact because it's based on your performance ratings and then how that impacts the compensation and merit distribution. So yes, overall, that's the short answer.
Great. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. We're at the end of our hour. I want to thank my panelists, my colleagues, Mary and Jerron, today. I hope that you found some of this information very useful and some of the answers that we've given you also helpful. There are a number of questions that we didn't get to, and I apologize that the time did not allow us to answer each and individual questions. However, Provost Clark and myself are taking the 5 imperatives on a roadshow across the university. So we'll be visiting all the division units across campus. And your questions will help inform and improve our roadshow, if you will, our presentation. So we'll be sure to address as many of those questions in the coming future on this. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We hope that this was helpful. And in the meantime, have a wonderful afternoon. And thank you for being a part of the University of Denver. Thanks, everybody.